The space station called Helix 9 floated in the darkness between stars. It was a place where many species came together to trade, to talk, and sometimes to hide. Ships of all sizes docked at its many ports. Creatures from 100 different worlds walked its metal corridors. And in the shadows of those corridors, secrets moved like ghosts. Valoran stepped off her transport ship and took her first breath of recycled station air. She was young for a Sithrani diplomat, barely past her 30th cycle. Her skin was pale blue, almost white, and her large dark eyes took in everything around her. The Sithrani were known throughout the galaxy as a peaceful people. They did not fight. They did not kill. They felt the emotions of others as clearly as they felt their own. This gift made them excellent diplomats. It also made them vulnerable. This was her first real assignment away from her homeworld. She carried a small bag and a heart full of hope. She wanted to prove herself. She wanted to show that she could handle the complexities of interstellar politics. She did not know that her understanding of the galaxy was about to change forever. The station was loud and crowded. Merchants shouted about their goods. Soldiers from various empires walked in groups, their weapons visible on their hips. Small creatures scurried between legs, carrying messages or stealing food. Valoran felt overwhelmed by the flood of emotions pressing against her mind. Fear, greed, loneliness, joy, anger. It was all mixed together like colors in dirty water. Her superior, Ambassador Thine, met her at the docking bay. He was old, his blue skin faded to gray in places. He had served the Sithrani Council for over 200 cycles. His eyes held wisdom, but also something else. Something that looked like worry. "Welcome to Helix 9, he said, his voice calm. "I trust your journey was comfortable." "It was, Ambassador. Thank you for this opportunity." Diane studied her for a moment. "You are eager. That is good. But eagerness must be balanced with caution here. This station sits at the crossroads of many conflicts. Not all of them are visible." He led her through the corridors toward the Sithrani diplomatic quarters. As they walked, Valoran noticed something strange. In certain sections of the station, the crowds would thin. People would lower their voices. They would glance over their shoulders, as if expecting someone to appear from the shadows. That first night, Valoran could not sleep. The station never grew truly quiet, and her empathic senses were still adjusting to the constant noise of alien emotions. She decided to explore. Perhaps a walk would tire her enough to rest. She found a small bar near the lower levels. It was filled with traders, mercenaries, and travelers of many species. She ordered a simple drink and sat in the corner, listening. This was how diplomats learn things. Not through official meetings, but through the whispers of common people. 2 Keth warriors sat at a nearby table. The Keth were large reptilian beings with thick scales and powerful arms. They were known as fierce fighters who feared very little. But as Valoran listened to their conversation, she sensed something unexpected from them. Fear. Deep. Genuine fear. "I heard he was seen near the Outer Rim last month," one of them said, his voice low. "Impossible. He would not go there. The Valorians have too many ships in that sector. The Valorians are afraid of him too. Everyone is. Do not speak his name here. You know what they say. Say his name, and he appears." The other Keth laughed nervously. "That is just a story, is it? Tell that to the soldiers on Maran Prime." "Oh, wait. You cannot. They are all dead." Valoran leaned closer, her curiosity burning. She had heard of Maran Prime. It was a human colony that had been attacked by Valorian forces 3 years ago. The attack had sparked outrage across human space. But she did not know the details. A merchant from a species she did not recognize joined the conversation. His voice was barely a whisper. "I was doing business near Maran Prime when it happened. The Valorians killed everyone, women, children, 4,000 people in one morning. They thought it would send a message to the humans. Make them afraid. It sent a message, the first Keth said. Just not the one they expected. What happened? Valerin asked before she could stop herself. The three beings looked at her. The merchant's eyes narrowed. You are Sithrani. Your people stay away from humans. Smart. You should keep it that way. Please. I want to understand. The merchant glanced around, then lowered his voice even further. One human. Just one. He came to Maran Prime after the attack. The Valorians had left a garrison of soldiers to hold the ruins. 300 armed troops with the best weapons money could buy. He paused. Valerin felt his fear spike. He killed them all. In one night. By morning, the garrison was silent. When Valorian reinforcements arrived, they found their soldiers scattered across the colony like broken dolls. Some had been shot. Some had been strangled. Some had been beaten to death with their own equipment. And in the center of the colony, written in the dirt, were two words: never again. Valerin felt cold. Who was he? The Keth warrior slammed his drink down. Do not ask that question here, little diplomat. Some names are not safe to speak. But the merchant was already talking, his voice trembling. They call him the ghost of Maran Prime, the butcher who walks, the man who ended the siege. His name, Valerin pressed. The merchant looked at her with something close to pity. Daniel Cole, that is the name. The Valorians put a bounty on his head, large enough to buy a small moon. That was 2 years ago. No one has ever tried to collect it. Not once. The bar fell silent. People at other tables had heard the name. They looked around nervously, as if expecting the shadows to move. Valerin returned to her quarters that night with her mind full of questions. The next morning, she asked Ambassador Dian about humans. His reaction surprised her. The old diplomat, who had faced down emperors and warlords without flinching, looked genuinely disturbed. Stay away from the human sectors of this station, he said. That is not a suggestion. It is an order. But why? What are humans? Are they truly so dangerous? Dian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. There are predators in this galaxy, young one. Hunters who kill for food or territory. We understand them. We can reason with them. He turned to look out the viewport at the stars beyond. And then there are humans. They are something different. Something that evolution created for a purpose we do not fully understand. They can be kind. They can be generous. They form bonds of love and loyalty that would shame our own people. But when those bonds are threatened, when the things they love are hurt, he did not finish the sentence. Learn the difference, he said instead, between predators and humans. It may save your life. Valerin did not understand. Not yet, but she would. In the days to come, she would learn exactly what Ambassador Dian meant. She would learn why the galaxy murmured one human's name in fear. And she would discover that monsters are not always what they seem. 3 days passed on Helix 9. Valerin tried to focus on her diplomatic duties, but the whispers about Daniel Cole followed her everywhere. She heard his name in the corridors. She felt the fear that came with it. The entire station seemed to hold a secret that everyone knew but no one would explain fully. Then the crisis began. A Valorian cruiser appeared at the edge of station space. It was a warship, sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons. The station's council called an emergency meeting. Valerin was permitted to observe as a junior diplomat. The Valorian commander appeared on the view screen. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes like black stones. His voice was cold and without mercy. 3 days ago, a human transport ship was destroyed in open space. A few survivors escaped in life pods. Our intelligence tells us they have taken refuge on your station. We demand you hand them over immediately." The station administrator, a round creature with 6 arms named Consul Rex, shook his head. "Helix 9 is neutral territory. We do not hand over refugees to any power. This is our law. Then, we will blockade your station until you change your law." The screen went dark. The council erupted into argument. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to give up the refugees and avoid trouble. Ambassador Dan stood. "The Sithrani support neutrality. We will not participate in handing innocent people to those who wish them harm." Valoran felt proud of her superior, but she also felt the fear spreading through the council chamber. The Valorians were powerful. Their empire spanned hundreds of worlds, and they did not forgive those who opposed them. That evening, Ambassador Diane gave Valoran a new assignment. The human refugees need assistance with processing their asylum claims. You will help them with documentation and medical care. Me? But I have never worked with humans before. Then, this will be a learning experience. They are staying in Section 7, near the cargo base. Go. Be helpful. And be careful. Valoran made her way to Section 7. It was one of the older parts of the station, with dim lights and worn metal walls. She found the refugees in a converted storage room. There were 43 of them. Men, women, children. They sat in small groups, wrapped in emergency blankets, their faces tired and afraid. These were not soldiers. They were ordinary people. Farmers, teachers, shopkeepers. Their transport had been carrying them to a new colony when the Valorians attacked. They had watched friends and family die in the vacuum of space. They had floated in life pods for 6 days before being rescued. Valoran felt their pain pressing against her mind. It was almost too much to bear, but she forced herself to stay calm. She introduced herself. She began taking their information, one person at a time. A woman named Clara held a baby that would not stop crying. An old man named George stared at the wall with empty eyes. A young couple held hands and said nothing, their grief too deep for words. And then there was Sophie Dot. She was a small girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old. She had brown hair that had not been brushed in days, and wide eyes that seemed to look through everything. She sat alone in a corner, holding a torn piece of cloth that might once have been part of a blanket. Valoran approached her slowly. "Hello, my name is Valoran. What is your name?" The girl did not respond. She did not even look up. Clara, the woman with the baby, spoke quietly. "That is Sophie. She has not spoken since the attack. Her parents were on the transport. They did not make it to the life pods." Valoran felt her heart break. She had seen suffering before, but this was different. This was a child whose entire world had been destroyed in minutes. Is there nothing we can do for her? Clara shook her head. "The doctors say there is nothing physically wrong. The damage is inside. She needs time. She needs safety. She needs someone to tell her that everything will be okay." Her voice cracked. "But how can we tell her that when we do not believe it ourselves?" Valoran worked with the refugees for several hours. As night fell on the station, she noticed something strange. The refugees kept glancing toward a maintenance corridor at the far end of the section. They whispered among themselves. Some of them seemed almost hopeful. "What is through there?" She asked Clara. The woman hesitated. "Nothing. Just maintenance areas." But Valoran could feel that she was lying. Or rather, that she was hiding something. Something important. Later that night, Valoran was walking back to her quarters when her empathic senses detected something unusual. It was like a hole in the fabric of emotions around her. Everyone on the station radiated feelings: fear, joy, anger, boredom. It was like heat coming from living bodies. But this presence was different. It was cold, controlled, like a black hole that swallowed all light. She followed it. She could not explain why. Something pulled her forward, curiosity mixed with a strange fascination. The presence led her to an observation deck near the outer ring of the station. The room was dark, except for the light of distant stars through the viewport. And standing there, alone, was a human. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a body that looked like it was built for violence. His hair was dark with streaks of gray. His face was hard, with lines around his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. He wore simple clothes, a worn jacket and plain trousers. He carried no visible weapons. But somehow, he seemed more dangerous than all the Valorian soldiers on that cruiser. He was watching the Valorian ship through the viewport. His expression was calm. Too calm. Like a predator studying its prey. Footsteps echoed behind Valorin. A Keth patrol was walking through a nearby corridor. She felt their emotions shift as they passed the observation deck. Fear. Pure, primal fear. One of them whispered something to the others. Cole. They walked faster. Much faster, and suddenly, Valorin understood. She was standing 3 meters from the most feared human in the sector. The ghost of Maran Prime. The man who had killed 300 soldiers in one night. Daniel Cole. He turned slowly, as if he had known she was there all along. His eyes met hers. They were gray, like storm clouds, and they held a weight that she could not understand. She wanted to run. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to flee. But her legs would not move. She was frozen, trapped between terror and something else. Something that might have been wonder. He studied her for a moment. Then he did something she did not expect. He nodded politely, as if she were just another person passing in a corridor. And then he looked away, turning his attention back to the stars. Valorin stood there for a long moment, her heart pounding. She had expected violence. She had expected threat. Instead, she had received indifference. Or perhaps permission. Permission to stay or to go, as she chose. She chose to go. But she knew, as she hurried back to her quarters, that this was not the end. Whatever Daniel Cole was doing on Helix 9, it was connected to those refugees. To that little girl who would not speak. To the Valorian ship waiting in the darkness. And she knew that she had to find out what it was. Valorin did not sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel Cole's face. Those gray eyes. That calm expression. The way the Keth soldiers had fled from his presence like prey running from a hunter. She told herself to stay away. Ambassador Thine had ordered her to avoid humans. This human in particular was clearly dangerous beyond measure. The smart thing to do was to forget what she had seen and focus on her diplomatic duties. But Valorin had never been very good at doing the smart thing. Over the next 3 days, she watched him. Not openly. She was careful to stay in the shadows, to keep her distance. But she observed. And what she saw confused her. Daniel Cole visited the refugees every day. He came through the maintenance corridors, avoiding the main passages where station security might notice him. He brought things with him. Food from the better restaurants on the station. Medicine that the refugees could not afford. Blankets and clothes and small toys for the children. The adult refugees looked at him with something Valorin did not expect. Not fear. Hope. Desperate, painful hope. They watched him like he was a lifeline thrown to drowning people, and the children were not afraid of him at all. They ran to him when he arrived. They showed him drawings they had made. A boy named Tommy asked him questions about spaceships. Cole answered patiently, his hard face softening just slightly. But it was Sophie who surprised Valorin the most. The silent girl who would not speak to anyone. The child whose eyes had been empty since the attack. When Daniel Cole sat beside her, she moved closer to him. She did not speak, but But she leaned against his shoulder, and her small hand reached out to hold his. Cole sat with her for hours. He did not push her to talk. He did not try to make her feel better with empty words. He simply stayed. He was there. And somehow, that seemed to be enough. Valoryn could not understand it. How could this man, this killer, this monster, be so gentle with these people? How could the same hands that had killed 300 soldiers hold a child's hand with such care? On the fourth day, her curiosity finally won. She found Cole alone in a small maintenance bay near the refugee section. He was repairing an environmental unit that had been broken for weeks. The station's own repair crews had ignored it. Cole had not. She stepped into the room. Cole did not look up from his work, but she knew that he knew she was there. Men like him always knew. "You have been watching me," he said. His voice was low and rough, like stones grinding together. "Yes," she admitted. There was no point in lying. Why? She thought about the question. She could give many answers. Because I am curious. Because I am afraid. Because I do not understand. All of them were true. "They say you killed 300 soldiers in one night," she said instead. Now he looked up. His gray eyes found hers. There was no anger in them. No threat. Just a heavy tiredness that seemed to go deeper than bones. 312, he said quietly. "I counted. Why?" He set down his tools. He looked at his hands scarred, worn, capable of terrible things. "Because they killed 4,000 civilians in one morning. I counted those too. Women, children, old people who could not run. Babies in their mother's arms." His voice did not change. It stayed flat, controlled. But Valoryn felt something beneath the surface. A pain so deep it had become part of him. A rage so old it had turned cold. "I was not there when it happened," he continued. "I was 3 systems away on a supply run. By the time I arrived, the colony was burning. The bodies were still warm." He paused. "I found my brother's family in their home. His wife, his 2 sons. They had tried to hide in the basement. It did not matter. The Valorians were very thorough." Valoryn felt sick. She could feel echoes of his grief through her empathic senses, but they were muted, controlled. He had learned to contain his emotions like water behind a dam. "So I made a choice," Cole said. "The Valorians wanted humans to be afraid. They wanted to teach us a lesson. So I taught them one instead. By killing them all? By showing them that there would be consequences. That for every human they murdered, there would be a price. That price would be paid in their blood." He picked up his tools and returned to his work. "The galaxy calls me a monster. Maybe I am. I have done things that I cannot undo. I have blood on my hands that will never wash off. But I have never hurt anyone who was not trying to hurt someone weaker. I have never killed for pleasure or profit. Can the Valorians say the same? Can any empire in this galaxy say the same?" Valoryn was silent for a long moment. Her people were pacifists. They believed that violence was always wrong, that there was always another way. But standing here, listening to this man, she wondered if she had ever truly understood what violence meant. "The refugees," she said. "They look at you like you are their protector. I am. Why? They are strangers to you." Cole stopped working. He turned to face her fully. "They are human. That is enough. But you cannot protect them forever. The Valorians have a warship out there. They have soldiers, weapons, resources. You are just one man." Something changed in his eyes. It was subtle, but Valoryn felt it. A shift, a sharpening, like a blade being drawn from its sheath. "One man was enough on Moram Prime," he said softly. "One man was enough at the siege of Colony 12. One man was enough when the Keth raiders attacked the transport ship Hope's Journey. He took a step toward her, and she felt the cold weight of his presence. "Do you know what the galaxy does not understand about humans?" She shook her head. "We do not fight because we think we will win. We fight because we cannot stop. Because giving up is not in our blood. Because we would rather die standing than live on our knees." He was close now, close enough that she could see the old scars on his face, the lines of pain around his eyes. "I am not a hero. I am not a legend. I am just a man who has lost everyone he loved. And I will burn down the galaxy before I let that happen to anyone else." He turned back to his work. The moment passed. The blade slid back into its sheath. "Go back to your diplomatic quarters, Sithrani. Tell your ambassador that the refugees are under my protection. Tell him that if the Valorians want them, they will have to go through me." Valerin left, but his words followed her. They echoed in her mind as she walked through the corridors. They whispered to her as she tried to sleep. She had wanted to understand the monster. Now she was beginning to. And what she found was not what she expected. Daniel Cole was not a monster. He was something far more frightening. He was a protector. And there was nothing in the universe more dangerous than that. The Valorians lost patience on the 7th day. That had happened without warning. A transport ship requested permission to dock, claiming to carry medical supplies for the station hospital. The station traffic controllers saw nothing unusual. They granted permission. The ship landed, but when its doors opened, soldiers poured out instead of doctors. 50 Valorian troops in full combat armor, carrying plasma rifles and shock grenades. They moved fast, spreading through the station in 3 directions. The station security teams tried to respond. They were overwhelmed in minutes. The Valorians were trained for war. Station security was trained for breaking up bar fights and catching petty thieves. It was not a fair contest. Alarms screamed through every corridor. Red lights flashed. The station's announcement system crackled to life, ordering all civilians to shelter in place. Ambassador Thine grabbed Valerin's arm as she ran toward the door. "Where do you think you are going?" "The refugees. The Valorians will. The safe zones are in the opposite direction. Come with me. Now." Valerin pulled free. "Those are children in Section 7. Sophie is there. I cannot abandon them." The old diplomat's face twisted with pain. "Valerin, please. You cannot save them. You will only die with them. Then I will die with them." She ran. Ambassador Thine called after her, but she did not stop. She ran through corridors filled with screaming civilians. She dodged past overturned carts and abandoned belongings. She felt the fear of hundreds of people pressing against her mind, but she pushed it aside. She had to reach Section 7. She was too late to warn anyone. But she was not too late to see what happened next. When she reached the corridor leading to the refugee section, she stopped. Her legs would not carry her forward. Her breath caught in her throat. Daniel Cole stood in the center of the corridor. He was alone. He wore the same simple clothes she had seen before, no armor, no weapons visible. In his right hand, he held a heavy maintenance tool, the kind used for repairing hull plates. In his left hand, he held a fire extinguisher. Facing him were 20 Valorian soldiers. They wore full combat gear. Their plasma rifles were raised. Their formation was perfect. They had been trained since birth for exactly this kind of moment, and they were afraid. Valerin could feel it. Behind their discipline, behind their training, behind their armor, they were afraid. The Valorian commander stepped forward. He was a tall male with silver insignia marking his rank. His voice was loud and confident, but Valerin sensed the tremor beneath it. "Daniel Cole," the commander said. "The ghost of Marum Prime. We finally meet." Cole did not respond. He simply watched them. His body was relaxed. His breathing was slow. He looked like a man waiting for a transport, not a man facing 20 armed soldiers. "The famous human killer," the commander continued. "I have studied your tactics. I know how you operate. You rely on darkness, on surprise, on fear. But there are no shadows here, Cole. No surprises. Just 20 rifles pointed at your chest." Still, Cole said nothing. "You are just one human. One fragile, mortal human against trained Valorian warriors. This is not Maran Prime. This is not a sleepy garrison of drunk soldiers. We are the pride of the Valorian military." Cole finally spoke. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Funny, that is exactly what they said on Maran Prime." The lights went out. Valorin pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding. The corridor plunged into complete darkness. She heard shouts, orders, the hum of rifles powering up. Then the sounds began: dot impacts, grunts of pain, the crack of bones breaking, the hiss of a fire extinguisher spraying. Screams short, cut off too quickly. Bodies hitting the floor. Dot emergency lighting flickered on, red and dim. Valorin caught glimpses through the strobing shadows. Cole moved like nothing she had ever seen. He was not where the soldiers aimed. He was behind them, beside them, above them. He used their own bodies as shields. He turned their formation into a trap. A soldier swung his rifle. Cole ducked under it, grabbed the soldier's arm, and broke it at the elbow. Before the soldier could scream, Cole had taken his rifle and used it as a club against the next man. 2 soldiers fired at once. Cole was not there. He had dropped to the floor, swept their legs, and was on his feet again before they landed. The fire extinguisher became a weapon. The maintenance tool became a weapon. Their own armor became a weapon. Everything Cole touched became death. 90 seconds. That was all it took. When the emergency lights stabilized, Valorin saw the corridor clearly for the first time. 20 soldiers lay scattered across the floor. Some were unconscious. Some were groaning in pain. None of them were standing. Daniel Cole stood in the center of the destruction. He was bleeding from a plasma burn across his left shoulder. A cut above his eye dripped blood down his face. His breathing was heavy, ragged. He looked like a man who had just run a marathon through hell. But he was alive. And the soldiers were not. He turned and saw Valorin pressed against the wall. For a moment, his eyes were still wild, still caught in the violence. Then they cleared. He recognized her. "The refugees," he said. His voice was hoarse. "Get them to the human embassy. Service Tunnel 4 connects to their section. Do you understand?" She nodded. She could not find words. "More soldiers are coming. I will hold this corridor. Go, now." She found her voice. "You will die." Something crossed his face. It might have been a smile. It might have been resignation. Maybe, but those children will not. That is the trade. The trade? My life for theirs. It is an easy choice. He picked up a fallen plasma rifle, checked its charge. It is the only choice I know how to make. Footsteps echoed from down the corridor. More soldiers. Coming fast. Cole turned to face them. His back was straight. His hands were steady. The fear that Valorin had sensed in the Valorian soldiers was nowhere in him. He was not afraid of death. He had made peace with it long ago. "Go," he said again, without looking back. "Tell him Daniel Cole said hello." Valorin ran. She ran to Section 7, gathered the refugees, and led them through the service tunnels. Clara carried her baby. George walked on shaking legs. Tommy held Sophie's hand and pulled her along. Behind them, Valorin heard the sound of battle. Gunfire. Explosions. Screams went on for what felt like hours. But it was only minutes. When they finally reached the human embassy, Valorin handed the refugees to the guards there. Then she collapsed against the wall and closed her eyes. She did not know if Daniel Cole was alive or dead. She did not know if the Valorians had won or lost. She only knew that she had witnessed something she would never forget. A single human, standing alone against impossible odds, fighting not for glory, not for revenge, not for himself, fighting for the children he had promised to protect. This, she understood now, was what humans did. This was what made the galaxy fear them. Not their cruelty, not their violence, not their love. The battle for Helix 9 lasted 4 hours. After the initial attack, the station's council sent emergency signals to every ship in range. A human patrol vessel, the Horizon, was 3 hours away at maximum speed. The captain pushed his engines beyond their limits. He arrived in 2.5 hours. The human Marines who boarded the station found a scene of chaos. Valorian soldiers were scattered throughout the corridors, most of them dead or wounded. Station security had regrouped and was holding key sections. And in the corridor leading to Section 7, they found something that would become Legend. 37. Valorian soldiers lay in that corridor and the rooms connected to it. They had come in waves, trying to break through to the refugees. They had all failed. Daniel Cole was still standing when the Marines found him. Barely. He had been shot 4 times. He had a broken rib, a dislocated shoulder, and cuts that covered most of his body. He should have been dead. Any normal person would have been dead after the first wave. But Daniel Cole was not normal. He was human. And humans did not stop. He collapsed the moment he saw the Marine uniforms. His body, held together only by will and rage, finally gave out when it knew the refugees were safe. The Marines carried him to the medical bay. The doctors worked on him for 6 hours. 3 times his heart stopped. 3 times they brought him back. The Valorian government issued a statement within days. They claimed that the soldiers who attacked Helix 9 were acting without authorization. They were rogue elements, criminals. The Valorian Empire had no knowledge of their plans. No one believed this lie. But it was a convenient lie. It allowed the Valorians to back down without admitting defeat. It allowed the station to return to normal operations. It allowed everyone to pretend that nothing had changed. But everything had changed. For Valerian, at least she spent the days after the attack helping the refugees settle into their new temporary home in the human embassy. They had been granted asylum by a dozen different species, all of them suddenly eager to show support for the survivors. The Valorians' attempt to terrorize humans had backfired completely. Instead of creating fear, they had created sympathy. Sophie began to speak again. Her first words were to Clara, asking for water. Her second words were Valerian, thanking her for the blanket she had brought. But her third words were about Daniel Cole. Is Uncle Dan going to be okay? Valerian did not know what to say. She did not even know Cole was still alive at that point. I will find out, she promised. A week after the attack, the doctors finally allowed visitors. Valerian was not family. She was not even the same species. But she asked, and they said yes. She found Daniel Cole lying in a hospital bed, connected to machines that beeped and hummed. He looked smaller somehow, weaker, more human than monster. The scars on his face looked older in the harsh medical lighting. The gray in his hair seemed more pronounced. His eyes were open when she entered. They tracked her as she approached. You survived, she said. Apparently. His voice was rough, barely a whisper. The doctors tell me I should be dead. I told them I have heard that before. She sat in the chair beside his bed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. I understand now, she said finally. Why they fear you. Why they murmur your name in the dark. Do you? He did not sound curious. He sounded tired. You are what humans become when you threaten the things they love. You are not the monster, Daniel Cole. You are the consequence." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed, which turned into a cough, which turned into a wince of pain. "That is a kind way to put it. It is the truth." He closed his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was distant. "We did not ask to be this way, you know? Evolution made us what we are. Our ancestors were persistent predators. We hunted by chasing our prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We are not the fastest animals, not the strongest, but we do not stop. We cannot stop. It is in our genes." He opened his eyes and looked at her. "And we bond with things. Everything, pets, children, old furniture. We become attached to anything that spends enough time near us. We call them family, friends, loved ones. We would die for them without hesitation. And when something hurts them, you do not stop," Valoran finished. "We cannot stop. It is not courage. It is not heroism. It is just what we are. A species of stubborn, loyal, foolish creatures who form bonds we cannot break and fight battles we cannot win." Sophie came to visit that afternoon. Valoran watched as the little girl climbed onto Cole's bed, careful not to touch his bandages. She held his hand and told him about the drawings she had made. Cole listened to every word, his hard face soft with something like peace. This was the truth of Daniel Cole, not the ghost of Maran Prime, not the butcher who walked, just a man who had lost everything and refused to let it happen again. A man who fought not because he wanted to, but because he could not do otherwise. A man who found something worth protecting and gave everything to protect it. Valoran returned to Sithrin a month later. Ambassador Dian had officially retired, citing health concerns. Everyone knew the real reason he had ordered a junior diplomat to the safe zones while she ran into danger, and she had been right to ignore him. He could not face her after that. Valoran was promoted. She became an advisor on human relations, one of the first Sithrani to hold such a position. Her government wanted to understand humans better. They wanted to know how to work with them, how to avoid angering them, how to survive them. She told them the truth. Every species she spoke to, every council she addressed, every diplomat who asked, she told them the truth. Yes, be afraid of humans. Be very afraid. Not because they are cruel, not because they enjoy violence, but because they are protectors. They form bonds of love and loyalty that nothing can break. And when you threaten those bonds, when you hurt the people they love, they will come for you. Not with armies, not with fleets, sometimes just with one person. One stubborn, impossible, unstoppable person who will fight until their heart gives out. And somewhere in the galaxy, whenever the powerful consider preying on the weak, they think about that. They remember the corridor on Helix 9. They remember the ghost of Maran Prime. They remember that a human might be watching, and they murmur his name in fear. Not because he is a monster, because he is what monsters should be afraid of. Sophie wrote to Daniel Cole every month for the rest of her life. She grew up, went to school, became a doctor. She specialized in treating trauma victims because she remembered what it felt like to be one. She never forgot the man who sat beside her in silence when she could not speak, who held her hand when she was afraid, who stood alone against an army so that she might live. She named her first son, Daniel, and whenever anyone asked her about humans, what they were, why the galaxy feared them, what made them different, she told them about a man in a maintenance corridor with a fire extinguisher and a broken tool. She told them about her, Uncle Dan, and she smiled. Because the truth was simple. Humans were not the monsters. They were the ones the monsters feared.